When emergencies unfold, whether it's a hurricane, a flash flood, an earthquake, or a fire, alarms sound, alerts flash, and the message is clear: act now to stay safe. But what happens when you cannot hear the alarms, see the alerts, or move to safety in time?
For thousands of people across Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago, those who are deaf, blind, and physically immobile, these moments may mean the difference between life and death, because too often, early warning systems speak a language they simply cannot access.
This is a story that is long overdue about the cracks in the system that is meant to protect us.
And the voices of resilience, advocacy, and innovation fighting to close those gaps.
From expert insights to raw human stories.
This is a journey into the heart of accessibility, equity, and survival.
UNESCO estimates that more than 1 million people across the Caribbean live with disabilities. Yet systemic barriers in education, health, and employment often leave this community excluded, making it largely absent from disaster risk reduction planning. In Trinidad and Tobago, the 2011 census recorded over 52,000 people, about 4% of the population, as having a disability, reflecting a 15% increase over the previous decade. Across in Barbados, a 2010 census reported that 5.3% of the population lived with a disability, but international benchmarks suggest the real prevalence may be closer to 10 or even 15%. Forecasts by the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, warn that these figures are just the tip of the iceberg. Chronic underreporting, weak diagnostic systems, and particularly low detection among children hide the true scale of disability in the region. A recent IDB study projects that by 2050, more than 1 in 5 people in countries like Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados will live with a disability. These numbers are more than statistics. They are a warning in themselves.
At the root of the challenge is how disability is defined and understood. Across the Caribbean, including Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados, there has been a growing shift towards embracing the social model of disability as outlined in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Under this model, disability is not solely an individual's impairment, but a product of structural, environmental, and attitudinal barriers that limit participation in society. Wayne Nurse, Acting Director of Barbados' Disability Unit, elaborates.
And they made up of the following categories. We have the physical disabilities involving limitations in bodily movement, conditions like cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, and those with amputations. Then we have sensory disabilities. Those would be disabilities affecting vision, hearing, and speech, leading to blindness and hearing impairment. But from our figures at the NDU of those requesting our services, we find that the highest percentage of persons utilizing the services of the NDU are those with physical disabilities, followed by those with vision impairment, then hearing impairment, and those who are intellectually challenged.
In both countries, these categories are increasingly recognized, yet accurate and comprehensive data remains elusive. Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados have invested heavily in multi-hazard early warning systems, EWS, to counter threats like hurricanes, floods, droughts, and volcanic eruptions. Technologies such as the Common Alerting Protocol, CAP, help automate alerts, while regional efforts like the Cruise Caribbean Project aim to strengthen disaster management capacity across member states.
The Common Alerting Protocol enables alerts to be sent through various platforms, including text messaging, email, radio and television interruptions, and dedicated mobile applications, and is integrated into the country's comprehensive disaster management policy to ensure a coordinated whole-of-society approach to preparedness and response.
As climate disasters grow more frequent and intense, early warning systems will remain the region's first line of defense. Legal frameworks like the CARICOM Charter of Civil Society and international agreements such as the Marrakesh Treaty provide a strong foundation for inclusive disaster preparedness. But implementation is key.
Across the Caribbean, the warnings are relentless. There are hundreds of alerts issued every year. But for some, the silence is deadly.
At a 2025 hurricane season briefing, Sabu Best, director of the Barbados Meteorological Services, did not mince words. The storms are changing, coming earlier, intensifying faster, and hitting harder.
Folks, summary, they're coming closer and closer. Not just closer, more frequently. It's a fact. The figures are here.
His warning wasn't just for the public. It was a direct message to institutions and governments. The climate is moving faster than our preparedness, and the most vulnerable are being left behind. Between 2020 and 2025, Barbados issued more than 3,300 weather alerts. In Trinidad and Tobago, that number surpassed 600. Most of these alerts reach the public through radio, television, and social media. But for many people with disabilities, the system breaks down. Deaf residents in Barbados reported receiving as few as 2 alerts a year. Some got none at all.
In Trinidad and Tobago, hearing-impaired communities described having no clear channels to access critical warnings, relying instead on neighbors, relatives, or luck. The numbers tell one story. The lived reality tells another. On the streets of San Fernando and Bridgetown, people admitted they had no idea how their deaf or blind neighbors receive alerts, if they receive them at all.
I receive the alerts on my phone, or I would hear it on the radio. Once you have a smartphone, it will pop up on your smartphone, and once you listen to the radio or you watch a TV, you will get it.
Well, obviously, you feel the difference in the atmosphere.
Well, I would say with social media, you seem to get things on the go. So that is one way that people will get messages that something is happening.
From the news, scrolling the internet, everybody does post them thing. Somebody must post on WhatsApp status.
No, they get it by people talk about it or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I live in an apartment complex and there are people who are disabled, and I don't think that if there was to be an emergency, I don't think there was going to be anything to help them in that scenario.
They got people out there that didn't even know what it is. Like, some of them barely got a little radio.
I really can't tell you how them will find out. Okay. We don't have much sign language and stuff on TV.
Some would therefore kind of slower, you know, they wouldn't really catch up on it.
I think these people might rely on word of mouth.
They could either have a hearing tablet with the capabilities of informing you, or a seeing tablet if you have different options with different tablets.
You know, it are very poor people can't afford TV. Them go get the warning from their neighbors.
Somebody got to feed them information to me, because they ain't hearing blind, so somebody has to be there to feed them information.
I guess from somebody close to them who could either see or hear. I think them just either tell them or inform them.
I would think that they would be relying on their circle, their personal circle, to keep them informed.
Persons with disabilities, deafness, blindness, intellectual disabilities, may need some other medium to alert them that some disaster is happening.
Create a app for them specifically so they would receive the news as the person who is able-bodied.
I feel like everybody has a phone now, so it need to be something through technology, maybe like a message or something.
Digicel will send you an SMS.
For persons who would be blind, have some sort of something audible that everyone can hear, and have some sort of, I would say, like a registry, so that they would send representatives to personally warn people in the community.
Set it in a way that you will know, and for the deaf person now, then somebody would have to communicate by sign language to them.
On every station, you're supposed to put somebody who's doing the sign language so that everybody could, see.
The pattern is clear. The public recognizes the gap, but responsibility is quietly shifted to friends, families, neighbors, instead of being built into national systems. Survival, in other words, is left to chance. For people with a hearing impairment, that chance often means silence. The alerts exist, the access does not.
Alone in his home in Oropoon, Derwin Harris had just enough time to pack his ID, license, and a few essentials into a bag before the water began rising.
When flooding happens, I climb to the roof of my house. He said first, I moved my table, my chair, climbed up on it to the top of my house. Well, eventually the flood went down. It subsided.
He never received a warning. He only knew the flood was coming because a friend messaged him in sign language.
No, I have not. Another person might get it, and then they would tell me or show me.
For Dana Smith, a teacher at the Cascade School for the Deaf, the story is similar. She once received text messages long ago, 4 sentences or more, but now she finds the system has all but disappeared.
Now, you see, it depends. The messages that I received in the past, as far as I remember, if I really was faced with a disaster, I would not have enough time to pack and to plan and to organize and move out. Most times it would be a message sent to my phone, the SMS. But please remember, some of our deaf people don't have that ability to read. So that is why I think Facebook or WhatsApp might be better.
When a flood came to her area, she was lucky to be home with her family.
My family were listening to the radio and they told me that this was coming.
But the thought of being alone unsettles her.
Imagine if I was home alone. If there is WhatsApp or Facebook and it came through last minute, I would be lost.
Saju Ramdani lives alone in Currap. He has never received an early warning directly. He remembers an earthquake, but said the warnings after are vague at best.
On WhatsApp, I have seen messages that if there's a storm, who to contact when you need help. But the actual warning, he hasn't seen that.
When asked how he feels during times of risk,
I pray. I pray and ask God to protect me where I am and keep me safe.
Even those with training are left to guess. Valdano Tobias, also a teacher at Cascade, described an earthquake at a television station.
It was the worst earthquake ever. This was different. It was long. It was shaking. The first time I had that experience, right? But remember, I was in a building. I was high up and the building was shaking. So I moved under the table as quickly as I could. But I didn't trust being safe under the table either. I waited until I saw people come out, then I followed the people.
For Trinidad and Tobago's deaf community, disasters are not just a test of infrastructure, they are a test of visibility.
Basically saying I would rely on another friend to call and tell me if it's false. If I get a message, I would most likely take it through and start moving and believe in God that we'd be safe.
The silence doesn't stop at Trinidad and Tobago. Across the sea in Barbados, the same stories echoes. Different voices, same exclusion. Dario Nightingale, a deaf artisan and photographer, puts it plainly.
I don't get early warning systems. The deaf are left behind. For the hearing person, they're able to be made aware quickly because they're here on the radio or people speak with one another, but then the deaf are left behind. They don't know what is happening. They find out afterwards. So that is a challenge.
For those who can hear, radio warnings are routine. For the deaf, it's often second-hand news that is late, incomplete, or not at all. Lionel Smith, president of the Barbados Horizon Deaf Charity, remembered how during an earthquake, deaf students were the first to act and the only ones who felt the danger before it was announced.
Started to escape the room. I remembered the blind children were left behind and the teachers as well. All the deaf children went out and they were safe outside. And I remember the teacher came and asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" They thought there was a big fight and everybody rushed out to see the fight. No, that was not the case. And I also remember all the deaf were like, "Didn't you feel it?" The teachers were like, "No."
Even in moments of instinct, when the earth shakes or the sky darkens, Barbados' deaf community still waits for a system that speaks their language.
So, early warning system here in Barbados, well, deaf people are left behind when it comes to that. Persons who can hear the radio, they will hear the alerts first. Barbadians are accustomed to listening to the radio, and so hearing people will hear it, and then the deaf community will hear the news afterward. But we need a system where everyone can hear at the same, or be made aware of what's happening at the same time.
They propose a simple solution: use colors, icons, simple language videos, real-time social media alerts, and WhatsApp groups that don't rely solely on English text.
It would be better if we can have like pictures, visual cues, maybe color coding, yellow, orange, red. Something that will help the deaf to easily understand the message them there. But one problem is that the other man, he will be talking and showing what's happening on the screen. No captions, no subtitles. The hearing people can hear what's happening. It might be a 2-minute video, no captions, no subtitles. That is a problem.
The message is clear. This is not just about alerts. It's about inclusion in safety, equity in preparedness, and the right to survive.
The public service announcements do not really help the deaf community. What they can do is have a sign language interpreter or a deaf person there signing and explaining the message, or have a demo or a little dramatization of how to take safety precautions. It can be placed on CDC TV8, social media, and don't do it once in a while. What I prefer is a notification on the phone, a prompt notification. For example, there may be a radio announcement and then something on social media, but I prefer something to come on social media at the same time on the phone.
No, no, no. It's very important that the deaf understand clearly, and a picture and a video, that will work. There's definitely not enough support. How do we stay in touch? How do we contact the police? How do we contact the emergency responders? How do we contact the hospital? How do you call? What's the relay system? We don't have it.
So we need to have training, to have the deaf community involved, know what to do if there's an emergency, where to go. If the house is not in a good condition, what to do, that's important.
Such a program would be very good. It would help the hearing people show up and help deaf people more. Something as basic as a form to fill out, to get that information, to get the data, to know where the deaf people are, know their addresses, know the emergency phone numbers. That would help. We need that kind of program really fast.
But there's one critical stretch that still breaks down: the last mile, a final connection between alert and action. And when that connection fails to reach people with disabilities, it's not just a gap, it's a crisis.
Maya, a representative from the Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired, TAHI, knows this reality well. Despite her efforts, the system still excludes thousands.
The last report that was actually done by the Central Statistical Office in Trinidad and Tobago was back in 2011. Now, based on the numbers that came out of this report, it was reported approximately 6,500 persons were actually deaf. We are not sure if they're just deaf or hard of hearing or lately deafened or if it's a senior citizen. So the information is very vague. So at this point, the association understands that the data is lacking. And as a result of that, we're going to take the initiative to establish our own survey.
The lack of reliable numbers is just one gap. Another, perhaps more dangerous, is how emergency alerts are delivered.
While we can make it something that is standardized, we just need to ensure that when we do consider an alert, it's an alert that is accessible to all, right? With the sign language, the closed captioning, the person speaking, etc.
Wayne Nurse, acting director of the Disabilities Unit in Barbados, agrees that not all needs are currently being met, especially for those with intellectual disabilities.
However, there are calls for the recognition of those who are intellectually challenged. There's a call to tailor alerts to suit that segment of persons, and that can be done through the use of simple, clear messaging and by using more visual elements. Because presently, text messages can be received on your telephone and accessed by all persons, including persons with disabilities who can read the text or convert text to speech.
Maya has experienced firsthand how hard it can be to respond to a disaster.
If I am standing in the bank or if I am standing in a hospital and an emergency hits or a disaster hits and persons around you, I mean, it's natural for somebody with a hearing disability to be able to observe what's going on. We can sense danger. Basically, we are, as a flow in the system, dependent upon other persons to get the information, to process the information, and then act upon it. And within that short space of time, it's not always easy for us to just, react to it in line with what is taught to us under disaster preparedness, what we should do, where we should go, how we should react, the things we need to do, etc.
Jamila, another advocate at Tahi, is equally blunt.
They may interrupt a radio program. Of course, if you interrupt a radio program, a deaf or hard of hearing person is not going to be aware of that information. We need somebody to come and do an interpretive video so that we can send it out within the next 5 minutes, within the next 10 minutes. You can now create a channel that is specifically for the deaf or hard of hearing community. Being able to just basically ask someone, are you good? Do you need medication? Those types of questions would also help.
Maya adds that while social media helps, it is not enough.
They're always on WhatsApp because the way they communicate is via video, so they always have to be calling via video to be able to communicate. Sometimes the sign language interpreter disappears. And there's also the complaint about the size of the sign language interpreter on the TVs.
What I would also like to see is, in the event of someone having to be relocated or moved because of an emergency, that within the first responder system, that there should be at least one person there who should be able basically to communicate with that person.
My particular call to those who are actually listening is for them to now mandate this and ensure that when you send that alert out, that alert is accessible to every individual.
For vulnerable communities across the Caribbean, the silence before a storm isn't calm, it's isolation. It's the absence of access, of equity, of warning. But not all exclusions look the same. For the visually impaired, the challenge isn't what they don't hear, it's what they cannot see.
Candice John, president of the Persons Associated with Visual Impairment, PAVI, puts it plainly.
So like in the VI community, and for PAVI, I would say, we know who are our members. We try our best to get the information, and we always have to be reminded, as much as technology keeps changing, there are people who not into technology as some of us are. So there are people who don't use WhatsApp, who don't use Facebook, TikTok, and all these other social media platforms, and their only form of communication is through either a regular message or a direct phone call. So we always have to be mindful of that.
Patricia Padmore Blackman, president of the Barbados Council for the Disabled, who is blind and also has a son that is disabled, reinforces reliance on traditional and digital media due to tech accessibility gaps.
The way we receive early signals for any disasters, personally, I would say through the electronic and broadcasts on the radio. As such, there is no app that I know of. I know that we used to hear about the CAP, and that seems not to be available anymore. So we have to depend on those two media that I just mentioned.
I know that the ODPM have been doing a lot in terms of ensuring persons with disabilities are aware on how to prepare for natural disasters. So I know they've been doing their part as an organization.
As a visually impaired person, yes, I can hear the radio, I can hear on the television. Through also social media, because very often we are on WhatsApp chats, so they are circulated. So I would say that there's no way that we can't know that something is happening.
For VI persons, maybe that message can not only be in text format, but also in an audio format as well. And media could just continue doing what they do. Because you will hear in the visually impaired community, a lot of them say radio is a blind man's best friend, because a lot of them are into the radio.
Jason Mitchell, a visually impaired advocate and athlete, described how he accesses information.
My cell phone and listening to the news and the radio. For most blind persons who use the technology now, the phones come with something called TalkBack. It's an app that you have to go inside the phone settings and go into accessibility and turn it on. But sometimes I get a phone call and all too. When I call friends and things around the area, they tell me that the San Rafael stretch underwater. They say social media is the way to go, probably some sort of platform where it easily accessed, because most as people doesn't think that blind and visually impaired people don't know how to use their phone, and there are a lot of people just like me, blind and visually impaired, that could use their phone. Yeah, and even have those and all who does TikTok videos and things also too.
In the Caribbean, emergency officials are rethinking how disaster response should look and, more importantly, who it should serve. Simon Alleyne, Deputy Director of the Department of Emergency Management, the DEM in Barbados, believes accessibility must be built into disaster response from the ground up. His message is clear. If the alerts do not reach everyone, then it is not ready.
So a number of players, which would include radio stations, cell phone providers, and of course the groups, the vulnerable groups such as the disabled, are included in the discussions, the policy framework as it relates to early warning systems.
Technology, he noted, plays a crucial role in closing communication gaps, but only when implemented inclusively.
For those persons who may be blind, as well as those persons who are deaf, we need to make sure that the messages reach them with the aid of technology, whether it's through the flashing of a light and, of course, having the text displayed.
One of the key components of Barbados' approach is localized preparedness. But while regional agencies move toward inclusion, many on the front lines believe the issue goes deeper than response.
There is this particular saying that we say nothing for us without us. So that simply means that whatever is being done for us, we should be included. So it's just like you just cannot just only speak on behalf of us. Our voices should be heard as well.
The clock is ticking, and the storms, they're not just coming, they're coming harder, faster, and more often.
For the deaf, blind, and people with disabilities, this escalating climate crisis intersects with systemic exclusion, and that makes them twice as vulnerable.
While regional governments debate preparedness strategies and climate adaptation budgets, entire communities remain unprotected, unalerted, and unaccounted.
The science is clear. The stories are real. The time to act is now.